through the earlier video recordings from your previous sessions. So I just want to reiterate that you guys have covered basically introduction and what are different models, implementation models, and also some, deployment options, hub and co-deployment. Uh, and then you have touched upon data modeling and custom data modeling. I feel this is what it is. I might have a few questions regarding data model later on, but at this stage, I just want to see, as somebody told here, once we get hands-on, I might have more questions.
Okay. Designing custom data model. Right, so in this we discussed active area, then we discussed Vivo type, and then we discussed entities, attributes, relationships, and generated model, the custom data model designing, right? So next I can actually, as per the process, we can go for the UI modeling, but I would like to directly start on process modeling, because UI modeling and process modeling, data modeling, these three things are independent chapters. And the reason why I'm going with the process modeling, because there might be a possibility that some of you might have already been assigned to MDG projects, or some of you might have need to do any project related interviews. So, or some of you are enrolled for the functional scope, right? So the most of the implementation activities would fall under the data modeling and process modeling primarily. Then it comes to UI modeling and other data quality functions. So that's the reason I would like to go with process modeling, and I hope everyone is in line with me, right? You don't have any issues as such.
Nope, no issues there.
Yeah. So in process modeling, we have few activities to discuss, few elements, sorry. One would be change request types and business activities and workflows. So here I would like to take with a very layman example to start with the process modeling. There are a few components like logical action, business activity, and CR type relationships. Now, from a it's not from MDG point of view, or maybe not from any specific application point of view, but in general, when you say business activity, what would be your definition from a very layman perspective?
Creating, changing, or blocking.
Okay, you're coming from a data perspective. Okay. Apart from this, let's say when I'm there in a project, if I'm sending an email to one of my manager, can it be considered as a business activity?
Yeah.
Or if I'm creating a project plan, it can be a business activity, right? So any activity which is directly or indirectly relating to my business, that can be called as a business activity. Now, when I'm trying to send an email or compose an email, it is a business activity which I have to do. To compose an email, I would require to execute certain actions, right? So once I compose an email, I need to click on send and cancel. I'm saying this is a business activity. And send is a action. And cancel is an action. Similarly, when I have to do a different business activity, maybe it can be a forwarding an email. This is also a business activity, but this time I don't have an action called send, but I have forward. If I'm replying, I have a different logical action here. Say I have reply all. So with this example, what we can actually understand, we can understand that there are some actions, but these actions are logically connected to business activity, right? So cancel is an action. This is part of the compose business activity, and this is for forwarding business activity, and this is for reply business activity. And these are all logical actions. This time, I guess. 1 second. Yeah. So the same business activity I can do with various ways, right? So one I can do with a mobile, I can do this activity via mobile, or I can do this activity via a desktop application, or I can do this with a Gmail, or it can be Outlook, or a, it can be a maybe open source tools as well. So ways we are considering it as a CR type. What are the ways that we have? So these are all considered as we can map it to a CR type. So this is from a very layman perspective we are talking. Now let's try to closely relate it with the master data. as an example. Now, we have, when we have to create a material, this is called as a business activity. Create a material is a business activity. And what are the various ways that we can create the material? One, we can go with MM01. Under, when we are creating a pivot, there we can create a material master. When we are creating an asset, from there we can create a material master. And I would take other ways. Each option is considered as CR type. This is one CR type. So a business activity can actually link to multiple CR types. But for CR type, there should be definitely a change to the master data. So you can display a material that is also called as a business activity. What purpose we will display a material? To verify something in the master data. So that is also considered as a business activity. But to create a CR type, there should be a change expected to the master data. Now, a business activity can be create, change, load, mark for delete, and even for a fact, display. Display is also a business activity. But for CR type, you can, for create, you can have a CR type. For change, you can have the CR type. Mark for delete, you can have. But for display, you don't have no CR type, because the request is only required whenever there are changes to the master data. Now, from these discussions, we can say that a logical action can connect to multiple business activity. So the relationship between logical action and business activity would be 1:n. And a business activity can have multiple processes. One process is using MM01, one other process PO, another process asset creation, and there are some other, say Z applications. So the business activity and CR type relationship is also 1:n. But here, the CR type will have a condition only for master data changes. Even creation is also considered as a change.
Karthik, quick question there.
Uh-huh.
In the create a material section, you've got MM01, which I get it.
Uh-huh.
But how do you create a material with PO and an asset?
So when in the transaction, when you're creating a purchase order, if you don't have a material, there is an option for you to create a material from PO.
It goes to MM01, right?
It doesn't go to MM01. It shows you a pop-up. The required mandatory fields to create a PO. Material number, material type, material group, and some of the base unit of measure, volume, weight, very basic attributes of a material master.
Okay.
It doesn't take you to MM01. Yeah.
All right.
So similarly, you are creating a fixed asset, then you have an option to create a MM01. Material from there. Right. So we are clear with these relationships and what is the role of each element in the process modeling, right? Any questions here?
when you're saying this Swaroop here, when you're saying MM01 you're using to create, but in MDG environment, are we still using MM01?
No, in MDG environment you don't use it, but for that you will use a CR type for it.
Yeah.
There will be
Okay.
a CR type for that. Now, every change request type will be assigned to one workflow template. Only one. It's 1:1. A CR type can have only one workflow template. It cannot have multiple. So let's say if we need to design a workflow, our understanding should start from logical action to business activity to CR type to workflow. So that's what the intention that we are discussing about these concepts. Right, so let me quickly create a workflow and show you how the process modeling works. Then next my discussion would be on workflow types. There is static workflow template and there is BRF plus workflows. So most of our functional configurations or the business requirement gatherings or the workshops, our most of the time would actually fall under designing these configurations. Now, creating an organization, the moment I click on this organization, this is a logical action which I'm triggering. So this logical action will be connected to a business activity, and that business activity has multiple CR types here. Let's see how the CR types are coming in this pop-up. In MDG AMG, we'll go to general settings. So we are done with this data modeling concept, and now we are into this process modeling. In the process modeling, we have business activities, change request, and workflows. We'll come to this part, define governance scope, and create edition type, and other configuration nodes here at later point of time when we actually done with the UI modeling. All these things are somehow related to UI. So we'll park this discussion after UI modeling. Now, we do not really require to define the logical actions. These are the logical actions which are delivered by SAP. And in fact, if you define your own logical actions, if you expect them to work, it won't work. SAP will support the logical actions which are only delivered in this configuration node. We are not supposed to change them. And at least from my last 6+ years of experience on MDG, I never had an option to, or I never had a requirement to create a new logical action, because all those logical actions, all our requirements can be mapped with this existing logical actions. Create business activities. This we can start creating them only for the custom solutions, but the standard one, we don't require to create this business activities. Now, as we discussed, there is a logical action called create, right? Let me take create as a logical action. This can have multiple business activities assigned to it. You take create material, and you take create breakdown category set, and you take create breakdown category, and this is create GL account. All these things have the same logical action, but the business activity is different, right? So for the business partner, the one which we clicked here, when I click on new here, which business activity would have been triggered?
Anything that's linked to the customer master or the business partner?
Exactly. So anything that would have been assigned to the business partner data model, BP data model, it can be a create vendor, or it can be create business partner, or it can be create supplier. We have 3 different possibilities. So I think someone has changed this. This is not a right one. Just create vendor request, and logical action is different. This is not the standard function. But yeah, we can look into this too. But here, since we are in the menu of business partner, the most relevant business activity would be create business partner. If we are there in the create supplier governance, there would be one more governance, like we have customer governance. From the customer governance, it would be more relevant that it would be create customer. Now I'll take this business partner, BPP1 is a business activity. And this business activity should be linked with the CR type. So here is a place where we'll create a CR type, create change request, and the create change request types. I'll filter the interest related to BP data model. And this, I have various configurations. In the BP, I have create supplier, process, create vendor, everything is available in the same configuration node. But I just wanted to show you, filter you, the list of CR types which we are getting in the pop-up. Our intention is only to filter this values. Right, so first we'll understand where we can link the CR type with the business part, business activity. I will take one here for example. This is one, so it should be potentially available in our UI, and it has an option to assign a business activity, BP1 P1. So let me identify the table in the backend for the same. And this is the table. In this table, we'll give BPP1 as a business activity and see the list of CR types. These are all the CR types what we have. Or yeah. I'll find out the CR type table. We should be seeing all these things in our PAPO, right? So BP P1, P7 static. I should be finding somewhere here. Yeah, P1 static, create vendor, create business partner as a WF. So the configurations, whatever we are discussing and the relationship between them are in line with the system behavior. Any questions on this?
And the reason we have so many change requests is because of people trying to go and create different change requests for the business partner, right?
Correct.
SAP
But
delivers just a couple in this case, like
exactly. So SAP delivers only a couple, few of them. But we'll come to a discussion when there could be a real-time requirement that you'll end up creating multiple CR types. That is purely depend on the governance processes. What is your local governance body and how many processes that you have? Based on that, we'll create a CR type. So I'll take an example of business partner once, which is static. Click on OK. Then it will identify the workflow template. The moment I select the CR type, system will identify the workflow template on the CR type. How does the system identifies it? Because the CR type has the workflow template assigned here. Again, the relationship between the CR type and the workflow is 1:1. It can have only one workflow template. Now, what are the mandatory columns that we need to give when we are creating a CR type? So in this example, I'll create a custom CR type for the standard process, and we'll see how we can actually trigger a workflow from this. Now, there is a naming convention here to follow. When we are seeing BP1, P1, This one indicates the process, and this one indicates the activity. Example, BP1 indicates it is create business partner, and P1, P2, P3, or it can be P4, P5, right? So P1, it can be a business partner creation, and P2, it is business partner with hierarchy. P3, it can be creation of business partner, but it is with a Fiori application. P4, it can be creation of a business partner which is local BP, and P5 you can have foreign BPs. So this process is purely dynamic. You can include anything in the process. So here we are taking an example of the change in the application. So Fiori application, we are saying it's a process 3, and the business partner application, we are saying it's a process 1. And why do we think the application should make a difference in the process? Yeah, there is a difference, because when we are actually working on a BP application in NWBC, it has all 400-500 of attributes in the BP, and it has all the validations and derivations. But when you go to Fiori, it's a very light application. You have minimum mandatory fields there. So you might not expect all your derivations will work there. So the process is different.
So if you configure a change request type, Karthik, do you have to create these P1s, P2s, P3s, P4s in the system? Or
It
is
is
just a
not
naming
mandatory.
convention? Okay.
It is not mandatory. So example, if we go for material, finished goods materials has a different process, and raw material has a different process. So that time we have end up creating multiple CR types for the same material creation.
So you'll have a CR type for creating a finished goods, CR type for creating a WIP, CR type for creating a raw material.
Exactly. So this is one of the client requirement. I mean, because they have various processes similarly. And one of the example that I'm taking is also a local governance processes has a different governance body, and international business partner has a different governance body. This is for a different client requirement. So this process is purely dynamic. Based on the client requirement, we'll create multiple processes.
And the reason being the people involved to approve the process are different.
Exactly. People involved or the validations are different. A local body should always have the country as, let's say if you're working in India, it has to be always India. You cannot have a different business partner, right? So that kind of validation makes difference.
Basically, we are talking about workflow steps, right? Different workflow steps. For
different workflow steps, yeah.
But the idea should be, if you're a global company, the idea should be to simplify and streamline the process. So you would think you would have like keep the change request types to the minimal so it's manageable. And you don't want to have like 20 different change requests for creating a finished good, right?
True. But based on one of the customer experiences, we have almost created 80 CR types for the customer just to create a material.
Holy smokes.
And the business is purely different. It's a manufacturing business. So each line of business, so it's a finished good. Ultimately, FUD is a finished good, right? But the line of business there is a different. So you create a disposable glass, the process is different. It's a finished good. You create tissue papers, it's a different process. You create handkerchiefs, it's a different process. But ultimately, it's a FUD. FERT. So it's a manufacturing company, mostly into e-commerce. So they have almost 70 products to manufacture. Each product has a different governance body.
So Karthik, this is Sam. So is it fair to say the CR types or the number of CR types, it's kind of related to the how the governance is different for those different actions?
Yeah. So that should be the major parameter to decide.
Okay.
The total number of governance bodies that you have, ideally you'll have similar kind of the CR types. You say you have 10, you have 10 CR types.
So it makes sense to define the governance body first, right? In a way,
Yeah.
at least theoretically.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So in our case, if we have a centralized global control with 3 FTEs managing the products, so in my case, I would say just create one change request and be done with it.
Right.
And if you've got decentralized version, that's when you have to have multiple change request types.
True.
Okay.
But also Muthu, in the
So in this
centralized
example,
one,
sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to trying to understand. But if we have 5 people in that workflow in that central body, then any one of them can sign off, right? In that governance model.
Yeah, I think for us, Sam, what we've done is we have created a governance council with multiple 3 levels of approvals. We're calling it the data stewards, governance council, and the approving authority. So if that's going to be centralized, we'll have 3 different associates working on a change request type. One guy is going to request it, one guy is going to add value to it, one guy will review it, and one guy will approve it. And that's going to be the same across the entire globe. Then all I need is one change request for the finished good in this case, as an example.
So in that case, the requester is a person who will get a request from various local bodies.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Maybe via emails or via incidents.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So for you, it would be only one CR type in that case. To make it
If it's right.
So what all 4 entities it would have copied? So one entry from this type of change request, and another would be entity type, and another would be a business activity. And these SLAs are optional. We can add them. So first I'll discuss about the change request type. So when we are creating a CR type, either we need to rely on edition type or the data model. We cannot have both enabled at a time. And let's go to the one of the example. Now, if we are taking profit center, you have edition type, but you cannot give the field is read only. You cannot have data model for this. Now, in what all cases that will go to edition type, this is only for the finance model. Only finance would require an edition type. The rest of the models will go with the data model configuration. This is just for me to differentiate the CR types in the pop-up. So a CR type should have a description and the data model assignment. Then we need to tell to a CR type whether it's a single object or it's a mass object. When we are saying single object, creation of a single business partner or changing a single business partner or mark for delete for a single business partner. That activity is called as a single object processing. And what could be a mass object? Initial loading of multiple business partner, changing more than one business partner, anything would be considered as mass. So what are the possibilities for the mass business partners? Mass business activities.
So you're meaning to say, Karthik, that during the initial transfer of data from, let's say, an EC system to an MDG, we have to create a change request to load all the data?
Yes, we have to.
Is that the only way to do it, or can you do it through the back end, like a
So
database table update?
we have multiple ways to do it. We'll discuss that part when we are doing an initial load. So you would require a change request only if you doubt that the data is not qualified. Let's say before you implement do MDG, you have done your data cleansing exercise already on your database, and you're sure that your data currently the data in your production system is meeting your data quality standards. Then you take a different approach to load the data. You don't inform MDG to validate the data.
Okay.
Yeah. Create material, change. Now what can be considered as mass changes? Initial load, mass change, hierarchies, and this is only for multi-record processing. These are the possibilities where we can say these are mass changes. So we need to decide that the CR type which you are creating, is it used for the single record processing or it's mass record? So unchecked means it's mass record, selected means it's a single object processing. Then we need to assign the main entity type as one of the mandatory. A data model can have multiple main entity types. It's not like a data model can have only one type of entity, right? So a data model can have multiple main entities. So the CR type belongs to which main entity? That entity name we need to specify. So all these entities would be typically a type 1 entities. And then we need to assign the workflow template. So once we are done with the CR type configuration, Then we'll come and configure the entity types. So how do you know that I need to give here the business BP header address number or BP relationship? This is purely coming from the solution. You might not see the similar kind of entity types or the relevant entities in Material Master. So this is coming from a designing from a solution. You will always have a template delivered by SAP. You just need to copy them into a Z template. Now, for the knowledge perspective, I just wanted to give you the information. Why do you need to give this? So to create a business partner, it is mandatory that it has to create an address number and the BP relationship number in the backend. Without this, a business partner cannot be created because a BP will definitely have an address, and that itself address is a type 1 entity, and it will definitely have a relationship number. So those mandatory entities we need to configure here in the CR type.
When you say the relationship number, is that the one that we did when we're doing data modeling, leading in?
No. So this is business partner contact persons.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Right. So there will be a relationship numbers which will be generated in the design. So that's where we are saying these three are mandatory coming from a business partner solution demand.
Then can we show so what might be for products then, Karthik, just as a curiosity, what might be the key fields for products then?
So it would be their material documents. Material and material documents.
Where do you see documents here?
I know this is DRAD is a document.
Okay.
DRAD is a DRAD. It's a document management table in the backend.
Documents being what we add to the like
material.
design documents.
Design, yeah. So it's a document link. So from the material master perspective, always when you create a material, it's always expected that you will assign the design documents, drawings, right? Some of the designs or samples to a material code.
So in our case, if it's maintained an external system, what happens then? Do we have to mandatorily create this DRAD basic?
It is not like mandatory. It will generate this DRAD basic as a number in the backend, and you have to link it with the different external system. Then you need to map this DRAD basic to that external system. So the document in the system will refer to a different system. And in case if that external system is referring to DMS, here you will actually give the DMS reference.
So when I copy this MAT01 to my own custom change request, it automatically copies those
two
entities. Yeah. Okay, so I don't worry about it.
So out of so when I copied, there are four records which are copied. And another would be the business activity. BP1 P1 because we are trying to create for a material.
For a business partner, you mean? Sorry.
For the business partner, yeah. And the scope on entry level. This node is only relevant in case if objects required checkbox is enabled. So what does it mean? Sorry, I referred to the wrong one. Only in case the parallel checkbox is enabled. So here we need to list down the entry types using which we can create a parallel change request. I would not want to get into this parallel change request concept. There is a difference between a parallel change request and parallel workflow. Both are different. So the moment we are done with the workflows, I'll come back to this parallel change request. So I would like to park this checkbox discussion once we are done with the workflow. To give a heads up, when you create a material, or let's say someone is trying to change the business partner, I'll take a business partner as an example. If someone who is trying to change the company code information and someone who is trying to change the purchase order information, so company code and purchase order both are independent, right? So system should not stop. If a person is changing a company code, it should not stop others to change the sales organization, a purchase organization data. It should allow them to do the changes. But if you have a CR type without this parallel checkbox enabled, you can't do it. System says the CR type is already locked by someone else, irrespective of what changes that they are doing. So to enable one master data object changed by two different parties, we will use this parallel change request concept.
So just to clarify that, so if I have a regional approval process, my BP is managed by multiple people, then if the if you're checking the parallel indicator, meaning that multiple folks can work on the same object, like a vendor or a customer, creating requests, I guess.
True. Yeah. On the same request.
When you say it means it's the same record, or it's just that's different records and same chain request?
No. It would not be a same change request.
Okay.
It would be a same business partner, but it will generate two change requests.
The same record.
Record is same.
Yeah.
But the change request will be different.
Okay. In that case, how will be the, let's say they're trying to change a particular, let's say, description. They're changing the description. Both are changing the same record. And how will they merge in the final approval process?
Now, if you look at back my example, there are two different set of data. Company code data is different versus the sales or data or the purchase data. As it is given point of time, one single field cannot be changed by two different persons at the same time. No, it's not possible.
Okay.
The data sets itself are different.
Okay.
So where do you separate the data sets, Karthik? That if you have got a parallels checkbox here for a business partner, where do you specify that there is a basic view, there is a purchasing view, there is a company code view?
In the scope of entity here itself. Here we'll come and specify that on which data set basis you would like to generate a parallel change request.
So I have three different entries here, entity types here, basically.
You will refer to the main entity type.
And what's the BP rel? What is the third entry there, Karthik?
It's a BP relationship.
That's only me, okay.
Yeah. So I just hold this topic here because there would be so many questions which will come. I definitely agree that the parallel change request versus parallel workflow are the most of the relevant business scenarios in real time. So we should definitely get a clear clarity on this. But for that, at least I want the workflows to be completed. If we are clear at one topic, then we can discuss it other one. Right now, we did not go into at least one. So I would like to park this discussion here on this parallel one, and we'll see the business activity BP on P1. And system is saying there is no step defined for the workflow and no processor assigned to the workflow. Now, how can we segregate whether the workflow template is a BRF based workflow or a static workflow template? Wherever you see this number WS 6080086, This refers to BRF plus workflow template. And anything which is not equals to this template, that can be considered as static workflow template. Now, from the standard solution delivery, SAP has given few workflow templates based on some industry standards. So what could be the minimal workflow template? A requester will submit a request, and a steward would validate it, and the final approver would approve the request. So this is a very common practice across the industries and across the global geographic locations. So for this, SAP has already delivered one template that we are calling it as static, because we cannot change anything in this template. We cannot add a new step in this template. Similarly, there could be a possibility of, there is a requester and there will be a steward and there will be a 2 level of approvers. There are 2 parallel approvers. This is also a regular practice that some of the data would require an approver from 2 different approvers. This would be delivered as a static template. Likewise, we have around 9 to 10 static workflow templates which are delivered by SAP. And the question might come, what happens if the template is not matching? Then we have 2 options. Either we can copy this template and create a Z version of it, or enhance it, or you can configure the BRF plus workflow for the same. I always prefer to go with the BRF plus application instead of enhancing the static template or copying it into a Z version, because it requires a development efforts. Coming to BRF plus, it does not require any development effort. It is purely a configuration. You can design any kind of static and parallel workflow templates.
So these workflows are independent of the change request types, meaning I can use any workflow to any change request type that meets my needs, is it?
True. Independent of CR types, independent of master data objects.
Does the BRF come with any standard workflow delivered by SAP? Default models?
No.
It's all custom.
It's all custom.
So question on the workflow then, in your experience, Karthik, most of the time, do you use the standard delivered workflows or do you configure custom ones for your clients?
Most often we'll configure custom functions for our clients. Custom BRF plus templates.
And you would not use the one that's delivered by SAP then?
When you say custom, what do you mean by custom? I would go with a standard BRF plus delivered template.
Okay. So, okay.
Sorry, if I say it like custom, yeah, it's wrong. It is not custom, but I would develop it with the base configuration for the standard BRF plus workflow template. See, there are two reasons for it. Since I already have a template, okay, so whatever static workflow template is delivered by SAP, I have all those configurations to build similar kind of a template in BRF plus engine. So whatever the customer comes with the requirement, I just need to load that into a BRF Plus application and activate it. My job is done. But
Okay, so you can reuse the static one in BRF Plus then.
no, I'm saying I don't reuse the static one. So I have mapped the static workflow template with the BRF configurations.
Oh,
So I have those configurations with me in an Excel.
okay.
So BRF Plus has a feasibility that it can load the data through an Excel and behave accordingly. So since I do this kind of implementations a lot, we have certain kind of global templates with us. Now this is not from the minimizing our efforts perspective. So it would be easy for me to go with the static workflow template. But later point of time, if you go to a real-time implementations, what customers signed off when you are looking at your business requirements gatherings, and then when they actually go to a playbacks or the UAT is happening, then you might get so many requests which are ad hoc. So no, my expectation was different, or the application is not going to a right person. At a very later point of time, they'll decide that the application is not working as per the expectations. So that time I need to end up designing a new workflow template or enhancing it. If I have to do an enhancement at that point of time where my project is in a very late stage or of in a project phase, then my project would have little extension towards the efforts and everything. So do not compromising on those aspects. I would go with the workflow BRF Plus template. If at all customer requires any changes, it's all about adding a new entry in my Excel and load it into the system. So that's the reason I prefer going with the BRF Plus template. Now, at this moment, I took a static workflow template. This is my static workflow template, right? So let's see how it is easy to configure the static workflow template. Save. I have created the CR type. And now I'll go to the workflow. And here, this is not my BRF Plus. So I have to expand my other MDG workflows. Here I'll come to assign processor to a change request step number. ZBP1 P9 is my CR type. Submission. That's all. My workflow is configured by implementing a static template. So what I'm doing, I'm just assigning a user agent to this.
And is it this? You are saying the same username here. The assumption is who's going to submit is going to approve, who's going to do the processing. The same person as check, is it? It's one guy doing all the work.
Yeah, I mean, because I cannot show you that entire approval process with multiple user IDs. So that's why I generally, given my username. But in real time, no, the users are different.
You can assign in the agent ID, you can assign a job or a position then.
Yeah. So these are the 4 options what we have. So who will provide these positions or the job or org units? Generally, we go to the governance bodies and ask them to provide these details. They will connect us with the HR team. They will give the hierarchy of the approval process, and HR will provide us these details.
And these ID should match the HR tables, is it?
Yeah,
For these 4 different, okay.
for this.
If we don't have HR system, what happens then?
If you
Like
don't
no,
have HR,
we don't have HR system in SAP landscape.
there are
If
two
it's
ways to
separate,
do it. There are two ways to do it. You can go with the BRF plus, where there you have an additional possibility called security role. Or we need to do an enhancement in the system. So any kind of hub deployments, right? Or any kind of an instance where there is no HR master available. But somewhere there would be HR master available from the client place. If not in the same system, might be in a different system. So we need to do a little enhancement that we will provide the HR IDs with a reference to that data, which is where your HR data is available. And we need to do an RFC call to that system to identify the users. That
okay.
would be an enhancement. If not, we need to ask them to create a HR data in MDG system. Because it's not about the entire HRs or the tasks that we know we actually do here, right? The payroll, everything we don't bring here. It's just they need to create one local governance body. So creating that HR data would not be a big issue from the client side.
Okay.
Yeah. There are cases, yeah. So there are cases where the HR master data would be frequently changed by the contractors. So there is a company who brings the contractors, even in the governance bodies as well. And these contractors will keep on changing. So how do we address them? It was a big question again. So now definitely our new CR type should come in the pop-up. Here it is. And the moment I selected it, by this time it would have identified the workflow template. So I have defaulted all the values here. I just need to give some name. And separate the request. On refresh, I can see that it would come to me, complete and send for revision. And how is these two buttons are coming? Again, everything is hard coded in my static workflow template. So my validation step has been completed and it comes with the final approval. Sorry. Yeah. You can review the data and finally take an action to approve or reject.
And where do you configure these buttons, Karthik, this approve, reject, or the different options you get at the different levels? I know it's
Right.
already done. Can you see that somewhere?
Yeah. So with the static overflow template, we have some actions, but you cannot see how these things are coming. So only if we discuss BRF plus, you would understand them.
Because at some point, if I want to use the static workflow, I should know how the paths are going to go, right? To choose the right workflow for my right change request.
Okay, the path you wanted to see.
The
Okay.
path in the sense that there are 3 levels of approvals. Each level goes up and say reject or approve and reject and approve, right? So I need to understand how the workflow works so I can use the right workflow for my right change request if it's static.
Okay. These are all actions, right? So the one you are seeing, the complete review, approve, reject, withdraw.
Okay.
Here is the place where we see the actions. And these actions will be assigned to a type, step type. So when you say approve, you will always see a step type with 2 buttons, approve and reject.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
Right? So when you say check change request, it will have agree and disagree.
And those are the buttons you see on that change request.
Right. So we are not checking it. So next level, the validation will process the request, right? So he would be having the complete review and send for revision. So if it is going for a resubmission, it's a revision, right? So he will have resubmit and withdraw.
Okay. And you assign this to the work request somewhere?
Now these would be hard coded in the static overflow template.
Okay.
So we cannot change those things. So let's say when I say process, right, the second level step who is processing, that will always refer to static step type. It is always 3. You cannot change from 3 to 1. Or you cannot change from 3 to A. Both are process change request, right? But if you look at actions at A, it has sent for revision and finalize the data enrichment. Here it has different actions.
So in the workflow that you used for your change request, you're saying that these numbers are hard coded into the workflow.
In the workflow development, yeah.
Okay.
So in case you're expecting a different functionality for this, right? So as we discussed, 2 options: you enhance it or you go for BRF plus. In BRF plus, you have all the feasibilities to change these things. Right, so this is regarding the static workflow template. And if you wanted to understand before the workflow template number, so you have static workflow template number and how many steps that it has, how you can identify it. So you have 2 options. If you are a little coming from a technical background, there is one way to identify it from looking at the workflow template. If not, we have an option to define the change request step numbers here. Again, these are all delivered by SAP. if you look at this template, 23, has total 6 steps, including 0. So you can expect, looking at these descriptions, you can expect which step will come in a which sequence. If you are looking at the one workflow template which we referred, the 40 comes with submission, processing, final check, and revision. So it has a possibility to reverse the workflow. This is one way of looking at identifying it. Or the second way would be, we go to workflow builder. SWDD is a T code. Here we'll give the template number. And this is the graphical representation. Here we need to focus only on a decision step. When I say decision step, it is yes or no step. So from here the workflow has started, and then it is coming to one decision step where the processing is successful, yes or no. Then you pick up the yes path. So this is one step where user is trying to take a decision, approve. Then again there is one more decision path, which is final check, second level of approval. And once it is done, it is activating the changes. And was there a revision? If yes, it will again go to decision step called resubmit, yes or no. If there is no revision, then it takes the no path and finally complete the workflow. So we need to focus only on the decision steps, yes or no steps. So it has 1, 2, 3, and 4 steps here. This should give a fair idea how many number of steps that your workflow has. And you can compare this same with the change request steps in MDG AMG. So when I say hard coded, that would be available somewhere in the backend task in this program. Yeah. Here application stuff. It is one hard coded here.
Looks great though. quick question. Generally speaking, in a project, who would help us with the configuration of a BRF? Is it the application consultants or technical consultants or?
It's an MDG functional consultant,
Okay.
or it can be a technical consultant, both. But if you have a person like a functional, he should be able to provide it. And if you don't have any functions in your project, because most often you would see MDG techno functions will be available, then the technical consultant should provide this template.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there are certain configurations which are, some are very specific to a change request and some are very specific to a application. Example, there are certain priorities which we can define to a change request, that the priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. These are not specific to a CR type. These are common across your data models. There are reasons for a change request. What is the reason you are raising a request? Is it a sales demand, or is it a marketing demand, or it's a customer request, or it's a wholesale request, or it's a in-house vendor request? These are something specific to a change request. And you can also configure some of the rejection reasons of a change request. Why you are rejecting the request? Is it because of the duplicate, or there is no business reason, or whether the vendor is in a blacklist, or the vendor performance is bad, or there are legal document issues of a vendor? We can configure all those rejection reasons. Again, this is specific to a CR type. Now, where do we see these reasons? Here we can see them in the drop down, and the priorities we can see it here, and the due date of the change request, by what time we are expected to complete this request. Now there might be some questions. So what happens if the due date is crossing? Is there any automation email functionality happens, or whether the request will be by default approved? No. These dates, due dates, and all these things will give an audit report in the change request analytics. So by looking at this request, it will generate a report which have been crossed more than the due date and which are under the due date where the delay is happening. So in auditing those reports, this attributes or priorities would be more important. Now, there is one concept called the change request status, which is really important and which influences the processing options of a UI. That comes under the change request, edit statuses of a change request. Again, these statuses are delivered by SAP, but in case if you wanted to add any specific statuses for your business model, you can configure your own statuses. Now, what is the relevance of this? To be evaluated, to be considered and approved, changes to be executed, to be revised. Now, if we compare with any incident management tool, when a developer completes his development, he just set a status, development completed, testing, waiting for testing, right? So looking at that, the stakeholders will understand what is happening with the incident. Similarly, when the change request is traveling from one department to another department in the approval stages, the status of a change request will keep on changing. Which shows what is an exact point, what is an exact changes or at what position the change request is available. Now, you may be having a requirement in your business model. Let's take it for, vendor, or maybe an example of material master. When there is a new sales request coming for a new product, and it is lying with the marketing team to verify the sales request, you wanted to have a status awaiting with marketing. You want to pass on this information to your business users because this marketing team has not yet acted on your request. Now, this description does not match anywhere in the statuses given by SAP. Then definitely you have a freedom to go and create your own status and give the relevant description to it. And we can only configure them in BRF plus application. Remember, we cannot do or we cannot map that in a static overflow template. If you have to do, there is an enhancement again. Right? So here there are some permitted processings. What are these permitted processes? So before we go to that, we'll just try to figure out what are the statuses which says no processing. Final check to be performed, final check approved, final check rejected, activation failed, approved to be replicated, approved and contact person to be processed, no status set, and complete workflow. Is there any close relationship over here? Can we identify something?
Is that a key decision step?
Exactly. So as per the governance standards, when we are having a requester and you have the validation team, so this team can be of any number of levels. Finally, it comes to an approver who is a key decision maker, right? So this person is expected, this team is expected to take an action. Only approve or reject, but no changes to master data. If he finds that some missing information is there, he should reject and give his comments in a comments window in the change request. He should not have any access to change the data as per the governance standards. So that's why when it is coming to approver, we will configure these statuses. Final check to be performed or final check is approved. Even once he is approved, there should not be any changes to the data. File check rejected, no changes. Activation failed, no changes to the data. By this no processing, what happens is automatically UI fields for the master data object will everything convert into read only. Right? And yeah.
Will there be any fields open for comments, like or just you can only? Yeah.
So he can definitely give his comments. So let's say he can give attachments. See, here he has notes tab. And in this notes tab, he can enter his comments. It's a free text. And then he can take a necessary action. Okay. Even if we are in a final stage of approval, let's take one scenario as an example. Yeah. Let me take our scenario.
I assume emails will be triggered at each step to the respective user.
Okay, so when you're saying email functionality, that is not coming from an MDG out of the box solution. Always email is expected to be a custom functionality.
How does it notify people who wants to approve? Like, for example, if a requester submits a request, until the logs in, he'll not know something is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are ways to identify the next persons, and there is no such kind of a email functionality which is offering by SAP MDG flavor. But when you go to SAP workflow, which is a standard SAP workflow, there is a concept called email notification framework. So what it happens is, before it shoots a work item to a person, so let me complete this part and I'll come back to that. So I'm in the next stage in approval process. Here I can edit the request, and here I can also edit the master data. And I'll complete the review. Right, so now in the final check to be performed. Final check to be performed is the status set with 04, no processing, right? So now I cannot edit any business partner details. I don't have any edit option here. And in case if I'm rejecting it, there is a mandatory from the configuration side. I need to enter the notes. And then I can reject the request. Or I can do any attachments if I have any valid proofs. right? So when it goes to, again, the requester, oh, sorry. Now it says to be revised, right? Now to be revised should not have node processing to be revised. It should not have no processing, so it has a different value. It says execution of changes. That's why it's enabled for the changes, right? So status is also important in the governance process to control the UI elements. And what is this change of an object list? This is also similar to execution of changes, but these are relevant to mass changes, not for the single object. That's the only difference. Okay, so now I'll come back to the question related to email notification framework. Yeah, email notification framework is a tool. I'll just share you a concept, how it works. So when workflow, it's a standard SAP process. Requester and to a specialist. So work item will go from his inbox to, it is going to his inbox, right? It goes to standard SAP workflow inbox. So the moment it goes to this inbox, automatically there will be an ENF which is configured here, email notification framework, that it will shoot a work item, it will shoot an email notification to the person to whom the work item is going. Based on this work item, it will identify to which users it is going and automatically send a notification to him. This is one way of doing it. And most often from the MDG perspective, we will be having a customized body and customized subject. It's little dynamic. So we will implement some of the MDG badges available. In the body, we will develop the email functionality.
In your experience, do you think it's mandatory to get into the email functionality, or is it?
So email is mandatory. Email definitely, you take
Yeah.
10 out of 9 scenarios, business
Yeah.
will demand for email.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So very rarely customer says, I don't want emails. So
Okay.
if at all, if the request for an email, we'll implement the standard SAP MDG badges for it.
And it requires coding. It requires development. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. And again, sending an email is purely an ABAP functionality, right? So ABAP can actually, give you a piece of code how to send an email.
Is it complex or is it straightforward?
Well, it is straightforward.
Okay.
So the next topic for us to discuss would be the BRF based workflow template. So I'm not sure. I just want to stop here because I want you guys to be, practicing in the system, and then I feel that you are confident and you can actually, understand the things. But I'll just go with your opinion. Should we go ahead about the BRF plus discussions, or you want to practice something in the system and then we'll take it to the next way?
I think I would like to practice it before getting into the details of BRF. Personally.
Yeah, this is Sam. I would like to do the same.
And I think we don't have much time also. BRF is bigger module, right?
Yeah, for me it would take a 45 minutes discussion,
Yeah.
which I think I know. What is the time now?
We have 10 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
Karthik, if you don't mind, can you just recap at least for the next 5 minutes? Basically, I want
Which one you want to recap?
just straightforward steps on creating a new change request. And that portion I was little bit,
So generally, I would expect participants will give me a recap. I don't do it.
No, I just wanted to know the steps and actual steps you create.
Sure, we'll do that as as a collaborative thing. We'll do it. If you got stuck in between, I'll add a step from us.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are into process modeling now, right? Yeah. What are the things that we discussed? I'll just open the MDJ-MG path. I'll open it for you, and looking at this, let me know. Process modeling. This is the node where we started.
We discussed the links between business activity to the logical action to the data model.
Okay.
So
logical actions and the business activities, right?
Yeah. And then between the logical action and business activity, it's a one-to-many relationship. And between business activity and the change request, it's one-to-many relationship. And then change request to the workflow is one-to-one.
Right. So I'll just take the path here. MDG, IMG. Settings. Process modeling. Define logical actions. Remember, not customizable, right? And define, what was that? Is it define? Oh, no, create business activity. Create business activity. And the relationship would be 1:n, right? So then later we discussed about the CR type. And then we discussed about workflow. So before I go to CR type, what are the mandatory configurations which we discussed in the CR type? Again, I'll open the screen for you. The mandatory columns would be the
Data
CR
model
type,
is one.
data model.
It's either the data model or the edition. I think the finance would have the edition.
Single or parallel. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No. Yeah, single or parallel. And then, well, those are optional, I think, but the workflow has to be there because that's the one-to-many. Or I'm sorry, the one-to-many. Yeah, the one-to-many, correct.
No, the workflow is one-to-one.
One-to-one.
Workflow is one-to-one. Okay, yes, that's the same column. But
single object.
Single object is mandatory to select. Either you select or you don't select it. But this is mandatory to take a decision.
Single object means it is like a single entry, multiple means if you don't select, it will become a multiple.
Yeah, exactly. The main entry type. So here I'll give the list of mandatory columns: CR type, description, data model or edition, single object, main entity, and the workflow template. Right?
Main entity is the one which links your workflow to your data model. Or sorry, the data model is one, and main entity is just what is the main role of main entity?
It links the CR type with the main entity. So example, if you are taking a finance, so I'll take finance as a best example for the same. So finance example, if you just create so if you create a CR type giving to an edition or the data model, how can you specify that CR type will belongs to GL account? It has GL account, it has profit center as the master data object, it has cost center. There are so many type 1 objects. So this CR type should be linked to which type 1 entity in the data model.
Okay, you're
So
selecting.
the
Okay.
splitting is not at a data model level, it's a data model and type 1 entity level. Right, again in the static workflow template workflow template we discussed static and BRF plus. How can you identify which is static and which is BRF plus?
Static is out of box.
Okay.
So number is like 786 or something like
Exactly.
Oh,
There is a template to it. BRF plus will have this template number. Apart from this template number, any other template can be considered as static workflow template. Right, so this would be the summary of our today's session.
The workflow template is one-to-one, right?
Oh, sorry, my mistake. Yeah, it's one-to-one. Okay, so the next session will do the workflow part. So if I say the workflow part is also done, I think the major part of the MDG implementation, lies in these two parts: data modeling and the designing of workflow. I would say the 50% of the main syllabus is completed.
Now, question, Karthik.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before the next session, do you recommend that once we get access to the system, do you recommend to create some custom data modeling for either products, customers, and entities, attributes, relationship, and then build a process model with some workflow approvals?
True. So there will be two workflows, two assignments for you. I think already one is pending, which is designing a data model. So that's not done.
Yeah.
You have to complete the data model assignment. And
has that been posted on the site? The assignment?
Yeah. So just let me look into that.
I saw it a couple of days ago, but
no, I don't think it's posted.
Just a moment.
Yeah,
if it is not posted, I'll do that once the session is done.
Karthik,
yeah, I think it's not posted.
Yep.
I'll post it assignment. And in the login system, For the process modeling, you would require to work on the standard solution because you don't have UI for the custom one, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. So the whole point, in your change request, when you assign the data model and the entity, as the UI is already configured for that, it just uses the default UI, right? That's what it is.
Right.
Okay. Whereas custom, we need to have a UI
Our
built, then
custom UI, custom built UI.
custom built. Okay, cool.
Okay. Thank you all then.
And Karthik, just to follow the protocol, I think the support is waiting on your email to them.
No, they said
to-
they'll be giving you by end of today, right? Hema confirmed it already.
We need to send a mail. Everybody should send a mail to server. Yeah, Karthik, is there an email ID you can send it to us?
No. Directly you can raise a technical support here. So I'll raise a discussion. I'll also send an email to the support team.
One more question, Karthik, is would they do a system refresh from the previous class to our class so the system is a bit cleaner for us to work on?
I don't think so. They would be doing it.
If there's no namespaces available in the system.
Oh,
Can we
right now the namespaces are available.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it works for next 1 or 2 batches. Because when you say refresh, I thought it's revert back to the previous version. But if your concern is related to the namespaces, these things have been deleted recently.
Okay, good. All right, thanks.
And
I don't want to
Karthik,
go
this is. Oh, sorry, Muthu, go ahead.
So I don't want to delete other people's data models and process modeling and cost concerns. So if there's some way to maintain that, like a March class or something, that might be helpful too when you create the data model, so we don't overlap each other.
Actually, that's a good point. This is Sam. I was thinking it's a bit of a funny comment. Like, how do you actually manage the master data of the master data governance structure, right?
Right.
So, if these councils are defined, and then how do you actually govern those structure, right?
And
but anyway,
one more caution would be a person who is working on a data model in edit page, in edit node. No matter whether you are working on your custom data model, others will not work. I mean, others cannot work on that data model.
Yeah, they are client independent, aren't they? Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, when you make a change,
please
it tells
make sure that you don't open the edit data model option for a longer period of time. Yeah.
Karthik, this is Sam. Just two quick administrative questions. The notes that you write are very good, and I was looking for them in the materials section. I think the PowerPoints are there, but not these quick notes, especially the one from.
Sure, because the only thing is, we will be updating the notes frequently, and this would not be your final version, right? So I don't have any problem. I'll say, based on versions wise, because finally at the end of session you'll get the notes anyways. But since
the OneNote thing that you have, or is it just the
OneNote thing?
Okay.
It will
So
be
if
generally
you can
shared,
upload.
when we are closing the batch, then we'll be giving that OneNote. But in case, if you want it immediately, I'll do that. No problem.
Yeah, post it there, then we can always have revisions to the document, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that it's a quick summary, kind of helps us to use it as a reference material, and then we can always go back to the PowerPoint. So because it's good notes, I think it will be good to have end of every session, if that's okay.
Sure. So
Okay.
generally I'll do it. I work it as a rough notes, but if I'm a little concerned if you're referring to that, maybe I'll manage myself, to be a little structured.
I
When
mean,
I'm ready.
it's good. I mean, because we kind of, I mean, everybody learns a little differently, right? So when you put it down there, at least for me, it's resonating with me.
Same here.
The other one is, oh, thank you. Yes. The other one is when they give the system access, are they going to email, or are they how are they going to, would we know that they have given it?
Um, I'm not sure about that. Can you please check with them? Because generally what I know
Sure.
is you will send an email and they'll acknowledge that this is your user ID. Definitely when they create an account, they need to share their user ID and password to you, right? So whether they'll send you an email or what is the mode of communication you do? Not sure.
Okay.
Please check with them. Yeah.
So the last email they responded back and said they need your permission. So maybe everybody we can send another email just to kind of make it more obvious to them.
Even if they're seeing for the confirmation it's already been updated in the dashboard, from my side also send an email to them.
Sure. Okay. We will all do that then. Thank you.
Thank you all.